Now let's begin. Bradley Clay stood in the kitchen of his in-laws' sprawling colonial home, watching his 7-year-old son Oscar arrange cookies on a plate. The boy's tongue stuck out in concentration, carefully spacing each gingerbread man with the precision only a child could muster. Through the doorway, Bradley could hear his father-in-law Gerald Richardson holding court in the living room, his booming voice recounting another story about the old days when he ran the biggest construction company in Millbrook Falls. "Dad, can I take these out now?" Oscar whispered, his hazel eyes bright with excitement. "Sure, buddy. Just be careful not to drop them." Bradley followed his son into the living room, where the Christmas tree dominated one corner, its lights reflecting off the ornate decorations that Linda Richardson insisted on every year. His wife Shelley sat on the couch beside her mother, both women wearing matching forced smiles as Gerald pontificated to his brother Harold, the mayor of Millbrook Falls, and a handful of other relatives. "I'm telling you, Harold, that new development on Miller Road is going to put this town on the map," Gerald declared, gesturing with his whiskey glass. $20 million project. Richardson Construction leading the way, just like always. Oscar approached carefully, holding the plate high. "Grandpa, I made." "Not now, boy," Gerald snapped without looking. "Adults are talking." Bradley's jaw tightened, but he caught Shelley's pleading glance. They discussed this before coming. Just get through Christmas dinner. Her father had always been difficult, but the holidays seemed to bring out his worst. Oscar's face fell. He turned to retreat to the kitchen, but his foot caught on the edge of the antique rug. The plate tilted, and 3 cookies slid off, landing on Gerald's imported Italian leather shoes. The room went silent. Gerald's face turned crimson. He stood slowly, towering over the small boy. "You clumsy little." "It was an accident," Bradley said calmly, moving toward his son. "Oscar, why don't we?" The slap echoed through the house. Oscar stumbled backward, his hand flying to his reddening cheek, tears springing instantly to his eyes. For a moment, the only sound was the soft crooning of Bing Crosby from the stereo in the corner. Bradley's vision tunneled. He saw his son's shocked face, saw the casual cruelty in Gerald's expression, saw Shelley's horror as she jumped from the couch. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. "Gerald," Linda gasped. Bradley crossed the room in 3 strides and scooped Oscar into his arms. His son buried his face in Bradley's shoulder, small body shaking with quiet sobs. Bradley's voice, when he spoke, was perfectly level. "We're leaving." "Oh, sit down, Bradley," Gerald said dismissively, already returning to his chair. "Boy needs to learn there are consequences. I'm doing you a favor. Maybe now he'll stop being so damn clumsy." He looked at Harold and chuckled. "Kids these days are soft. Remember when Dad would whip us for less?" Harold shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Shelley, get your coat," Bradley said quietly. "Bradley, please." Linda stood wringing her hands. "It's Christmas. Let's just calm down and—" "Your husband just struck my son across the face." Bradley's voice remained eerily calm. "We're done here." "Done?" Gerald laughed, taking another sip of whiskey. "Sit down, Bradley. You're embarrassing yourself. This is my house, my family, my town. You think you can just—" "I'm taking my family home." Gerald's expression hardened. "The hell you are. Shelley, you stay right where you are. Your mother spent all day preparing this dinner." Shelley stood frozen, torn between her father and her husband. "Sweetheart," Bradley said gently, "please get Oscar's coat." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, seemed to break through. Shelley nodded and hurried toward the closet. Gerald slammed his glass down. "You ungrateful. After everything I've done for you too. Gave you a job at my company, Bradley. Put a roof over your heads when you were starting out. This is how you repay me? Over a little discipline." "A job I quit 6 years ago," Bradley replied. "And a loan we paid back in full within 18 months. Details." Gerald waved his hand. "Point is, I built you up. And I can tear you right back down just as easy." He turned to Harold. "Tell him, brother. Tell him how things work in this town." Harold Richardson cleared his throat, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Gerald, maybe we should just—" "I own this town," Gerald continued, his voice rising. "The mayor here is my brother. The police chief golfs with me every Sunday. The judge at the courthouse owes me for his re-election campaign. You think you can walk out of here and what? Make me look bad? Who's going to believe some nobody over Gerald Richardson?" Bradley adjusted Oscar in his arms, the boy still crying softly. I'm not trying to make you look bad, Gerald. I'm simply leaving with my family because you assaulted my child. Assaulted? Gerald barked out a laugh. It was a slap. Character building. What are you going to do about it anyway? Sue me? Call the cops. He spread his arms wide. Go ahead. I'll have the whole thing buried before you make it to your car. Shelley returned with coats, her face pale and streaked with tears. Dad, please. You hit Oscar. You can't just. I can do whatever I want in my own house, Gerald interrupted. You want to leave? Fine. But don't come crawling back when reality hits. Bradley here thinks he's somebody, but he's nothing. A pencil pusher who got lucky marrying into this family. Bradley set Oscar down gently and helped him into his coat, checking the red mark on his son's cheek. It would bruise. He felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Not anger exactly, but a crystalline clarity about what needed to happen next. You're right about one thing, Bradley said, straightening. Reality is about to hit. Just not the way you think. Gerald leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. Oh, and what's that supposed to mean? Bradley pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Gerald scoffed. Calling the police? Go ahead. Chief Morrison and I are fishing buddies. He'll laugh you right out of the station. Bradley didn't respond. He scrolled through his contacts, found the name he wanted, and pressed call. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Bradley? Is everything all right? No, David. I need you to come to 1247 Oakmont Drive immediately. The Richardson place? That's your in-laws, right? What's wrong? Gerald Richardson just struck my 7-year-old son across the face. We're leaving now, but I need you to handle something first. There was a pause on the other end. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Bradley hung up. Gerald was still chuckling. Who was that? Your lawyer? Good luck finding one who'll go against me in this town. We'll see, Bradley said simply. He turned to Shelley. Come on, honey. Let's go. Bradley, Linda tried again, please. Gerald, apologize. This has gotten out of hand. I'm not apologizing for disciplining a child in my own home, Gerald said flatly. And if you three walk out that door, you're not welcome back. I mean it, Shelley. You choose him over your own father, and you're dead to me. Shelley's hand found Bradley's. Her fingers were shaking, but her voice was steady. Then I guess I'm dead to you, Dad. Because I choose my family. The one that doesn't hit children. They made it halfway down the front walk when Bradley heard the front door open behind them. Bradley, wait. It was Harold, jogging down the steps. The mayor looked genuinely distressed. Look, my brother can be difficult, but he's family. Maybe if we just give it a few days, let everyone cool down. Your brother assaulted my son, Harold. I know, and that was wrong. But you know how Gerald gets with his pride. If you push this, it's going to get ugly. For everyone. Bradley studied the mayor carefully. Harold Richardson was a decent man, as far as politicians went. He'd won his third term by a landslide, partially due to genuine public service and partially due to his brother's money and influence. He was also, Bradley knew, deeply in debt to people who weren't Gerald. Harold, I appreciate the concern, but some lines can't be uncrossed. I understand. I do. But Harold glanced back at the house where Gerald was visible through the window, refilling his whiskey. My brother has a lot of sway in this town. He wasn't exaggerating about that. If you try to press charges or make a scene, he'll make your life hell. You might want to think about Shelley and Oscar before you. Daddy, my face hurts. Oscar whimpered from Shelley's arms. Harold had the grace to look ashamed. I'm sorry, Oscar. Your grandfather. He shouldn't have done that. Then maybe you should tell him that, Shelley said coldly. Instead of running interference for him like you always do. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The driver's door opened, and a man in his 50s emerged, wearing an expensive suit despite the late hour. David Hartman moved with quiet authority, his sharp eyes taking in the scene immediately. Mr. Mayor, he said, nodding to Harold before turning to Bradley. I came as soon as you called. What's the situation? Harold's eyebrows rose. David Hartman, what are you doing here? Bradley called me, David said simply. He looked at Oscar. Is this the boy? Yes. Gerald slapped him for accidentally dropping some cookies on his shoes. David's expression hardened. I see. And where is Gerald Richardson now? Inside, probably pouring himself another drink and congratulating himself on showing everyone who's boss, Shelley said bitterly. Not for long. David looked at Harold. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to need you to come inside with me. Now wait a minute, Harold said, confusion and concern warring on his face. David, I appreciate you coming, but this is a family matter. Maybe we should let them handle it privately. This stopped being a family matter when Gerald committed assault in front of multiple witnesses, David said calmly. Now, you can either accompany me inside, or I can have the state police here in 15 minutes to make this official. Your choice. The color drained from Harold's face. State police? For what? A family dispute. For child abuse, David said flatly. Committed by a man who then threatened the victim's father with political and legal retaliation. That makes this my jurisdiction. Bradley watched the mayor's mind work, saw the moment understanding began to dawn. Harold looked between David and Bradley, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Harold stammered. We'll discuss it inside, David said. Bradley, why don't you and Shelley take Oscar to the car? I'll handle this. As they walked to their SUV, Bradley heard the front door open again. Gerald's voice boomed out, full of swagger and whiskey courage. What's all the commotion? Harold, tell these people to. He stopped. David Hartman? What the hell are you doing at my house? Bradley settled Oscar into his car seat and closed the door gently. Through the quiet suburban night, he could hear David's response clearly. Gerald Richardson, I'm David Hartman, United States Attorney for the Northern District. I'm here because you assaulted a child and then threatened his father with abuse of power and legal manipulation. Now, we can handle this two ways. Shelley gripped Bradley's arm. Bradley, David Hartman, the U.S. Attorney? Yes. Why would he? Her eyes widened. Oh my God. Bradley, what exactly do you do? Bradley looked back at the house, where Gerald stood frozen on the porch, his face visible in the Christmas lights, no longer red with anger, but white with dawning fear. I'll explain everything, Bradley said quietly. But first, let's make sure Oscar's okay. The emergency room doctor confirmed what Bradley already knew. The slap had left bruising and mild swelling, but no serious damage. Oscar sat on the examination table, swinging his legs and clutching the teddy bear the nurse had given him, while the doctor made careful notes. You'll want to ice it for 20 minutes every few hours, Dr. Ferguson said, her kind face creased with concern. The bruising will be worse tomorrow, then start to fade. I'm also documenting this for your records, just in case. In case of what? Oscar asked. Bradley ruffled his son's hair gently. Just hospital stuff, buddy. Nothing for you to worry about. After the doctor left, Shelley pulled Bradley aside, her voice low and urgent. You've been putting me off for 2 hours. We're at the hospital. Oscar's being treated. The U.S. Attorney is at my parents' house. So please, Bradley, tell me what the hell is going on. How do you know David Hartman? Why did he come when you called? Bradley took a deep breath. They'd been married for 9 years. 9 years of a good life together, of building a family, of intentionally keeping his professional life separate from his personal one. It had been easier that way, safer for Shelley and Oscar. But that separation had just exploded spectacularly. Remember when we met at that charity gala? The one for children's literacy. Of course. You were on the board of directors for the foundation. I wasn't just on the board, Shelley. I founded it, along with 6 others across the state. She blinked. You founded it? But that would mean. I'm a private investor, Bradley said carefully. I've made some successful investments over the years. Real estate, tech startups, infrastructure development. About 15 years ago, I decided to use that money for something more meaningful. How successful? Bradley hesitated. Very successful. Bradley. The Millbrook Falls Revitalization Project 5 years ago? The one that saved the downtown area from becoming a strip mall? I funded 60% of it. The new hospital wing we're standing in? My foundation covered the shortfall when state funding fell through. The mayor's anti-poverty initiative that got him reelected? I'm the primary donor. Shelley stared at him, processing. You're telling me you're what? A millionaire. Shelley. How much? Bradley met her eyes. As of last quarter, my net worth was approximately $400 million. The silence stretched between them. Oscar hummed quietly to himself across the room, oblivious to the bomb his father had just dropped. 400. Shelley's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair. $1 million. Yes. And you've been what? Hiding this from me? From my family? Not hiding exactly. Living modestly, yes. We have a nice house. We take vacations. Oscar goes to a good school. But I've always believed in keeping a low profile. The work I do, the investments I make, they're more effective when they're quiet. When people don't know where the money's coming from or what I might want in return. My father, Shelley said slowly. My father thinks you're a nobody. He's always looked down on you. Treated you like you weren't good enough for me. And all this time, I've been the reason your father's construction company stayed afloat during the 2015 recession, Bradley said quietly. I bought up his debt through a shell corporation and restructured it. I've also been the anonymous donor keeping half the town council campaigns funded. I own the building where the police station operates. They've been paying below market rent for 6 years without knowing why. And 3 years ago, when Harold needed a significant cash injection for his mayoral campaign after a scandal nearly tanked it, I provided it. Shelley's hand covered her mouth. Harold knows? About you? No. The donation went through so many intermediaries that no one could trace it back to me. Except David. Because David Hartman isn't just the U.S. attorney. He's also an old friend from business school. We've worked together on several initiatives over the years. So when you called him tonight, I called in a favor. A very specific favor. Gerald doesn't just get to hit my son and wave it away with his connections. Not when those connections ultimately answer to people I've been supporting for years. The door opened, and David Hartman stepped in, his expression grave. Oscar doing okay? He'll be fine, Bradley said. What happened? David glanced at Shelley, then continued. I had a very enlightening conversation with Gerald and Harold Richardson. Gerald is, as you might imagine, in shock. He's also scared out of his mind, which is appropriate. I've made it clear that if he wants to avoid federal scrutiny of every business dealing he's had for the past decade, he'll cooperate fully. Federal scrutiny? Shelley asked faintly. Your father's construction company has contracts with multiple government agencies, David explained. Which means every aspect of his business is subject to review. Given his threats about using his influence to retaliate against Bradley, I felt it necessary to remind him of the various regulations and oversight mechanisms that could make his life very difficult. You threatened my father. I explained reality to him. David corrected gently. And your father, faced with that reality, has agreed to take certain steps. What kind of steps? Bradley asked. First, a formal written apology to Oscar and to both of you. Second, he's enrolling in anger management counseling. Third, he'll make a substantial donation to child welfare organizations. I suggested $250,000, and he agreed. And fourth, he'll have no contact with your family unless and until you explicitly permit it. Shelley looked between them. And if he refuses? David's smile was thin. Then I start looking very carefully at Richardson Construction's billing practices, labor law compliance, and contractual obligations. I have a team of investigators who are very good at finding discrepancies. Is he clean? Bradley asked. Nobody's perfectly clean, David said diplomatically. But let's just say Gerald has been operating under the assumption that his local connections would protect him from consequences. That assumption has now been corrected. A nurse poked her head in. Mr. and Mrs. Clay? We're ready to discharge Oscar. Just need you to sign a few forms. As they dealt with the paperwork, Shelley pulled Bradley aside once more. Why didn't you tell me? About the money, about all of it. Bradley chose his words carefully. When we met, you weren't dating me for my money. You didn't know about it. You liked me for me. The guy who volunteered at literacy events and made you laugh and actually listened when you talked about your teaching job. I like being that person. Not the guy with the portfolio or the guy everyone wanted favors from. But we're married, Bradley. We have a child together. I know. And I should have told you. I was going to, eventually. I just wanted Oscar to have as normal a childhood as possible. Without the pressure of wealth. Without people treating him differently. Like how my father treated him. Shelley's voice was bitter. Because he thought Oscar was just the grandson of a nobody? Your father showed his true character tonight, Bradley said quietly. That's on him, not us. But yes, part of me was protecting our family from exactly this kind of thing. From people who see dollar signs instead of people. Shelley was quiet for a long moment. Oscar appeared at her side, clutching his teddy bear and a lollipop from the nurse. Can we go home now, Mom? She picked him up, careful of his bruised face, and kissed his forehead. Yes, baby. We can go home. As they walked to the car, David fell into step beside Bradley. That went better than expected. For now, Bradley said. But Gerald Richardson isn't the type to take humiliation well. He'll be looking for ways to save face. Let him look. He's boxed in, and he knows it. Besides, I have a feeling you're not done with him yet. Bradley smiled grimly. Just getting started. The next morning, Bradley woke to find Shelley sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside her. Oscar was still asleep upstairs, exhausted from the previous night's drama. Hey, Bradley said softly, pouring himself coffee. How long have you been up? Since 5. Shelley didn't look up from the screen. I've been Googling. Finding anything interesting? Clay Holdings. Clay Foundation. Clay Investment Group. She finally met his eyes. You own half the businesses in this town. The shopping center where I get groceries? Yours. The movie theater where we took Oscar last month? Yours. The park where he plays soccer? Your foundation built it. Bradley sat down across from her. Yes. Why Millbrook Falls? Of all places, why invest so heavily here? Because it needed help, Bradley said simply. 15 years ago, this town was dying. Manufacturing jobs gone, young people leaving, infrastructure crumbling. I saw potential. Good people, solid community values, room for growth. So I invested. And it worked. It worked. Unemployment down 40%. Property values up, but still affordable. New businesses opening. Good schools. It's become a model for small-town revitalization. He paused. It's also where I met you. Which made it home. Shelley's expression softened slightly. My father's going to lose his mind when he finds out. Your father already knows. David made sure of it. No, I mean really finds out. When it becomes public knowledge. When his friends and business associates realize that the nobody he's been dismissing for years is actually... She gestured at the laptop. Actually the person who's been keeping this town afloat, Bradley finished. Including him. The doorbell rang. Bradley checked his watch, 7:30 a.m. Early for visitors. Through the front door's frosted glass, he could see 2 figures. Opening it, he found Harold Richardson and a woman Bradley recognized as Candace Noble, the town's newspaper editor. Harold. Ms. Noble. This is unexpected. Harold looked like he hadn't slept. Bradley, I'm sorry to come by so early, but we need to talk. It's about last night. What about it? Candace stepped forward. Mr. Clay, I've been hearing some very interesting rumors this morning. Rumors about your conversation with David Hartman, about your actual role in this community's development, about... Who told you? Bradley interrupted. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I have sources. And when the U.S. attorney shows up at a prominent citizen's home on Christmas night, people talk. I've been doing some digging, and the pieces are starting to fit together in a very interesting way. Bradley considered. This was inevitable, he supposed. The question was how to manage it. Come in, he said finally. We'll talk. They gathered in the living room. Shelley joined them, her arms crossed defensively. Harold kept glancing between Bradley and his sister, clearly uncomfortable. So it's true? Candace asked. You're behind Clay Holdings? Yes. And the foundation that's funded half the community improvements in the last decade? Yes. She leaned forward. Mr. Clay, this is a huge story. Local resident secretly funding town revival, married to the daughter of one of the town's most prominent families, maintaining anonymity while my father treated him like garbage for 9 years, Shelley interrupted coldly. While my father slapped his grandson and threatened to ruin him using connections that Bradley actually controls. Is that the story you want to print? Candace had the decency to wince. Mrs. Clay, I'm sorry about what happened, but this is news. The public has a right to know who's influencing their community. Influencing or helping? Bradley asked quietly. Every dollar I've invested here has created jobs, improved infrastructure, or supported education and social services. I haven't asked for favors, haven't demanded policy changes, haven't used it for political leverage. Until last night. And last night, Candace prompted. Bradley met Harold's eyes. Last night, your brother assaulted my 7-year-old son. When I objected, he threatened to use his influence, including his relationship with the mayor here, to make my life difficult. That's when I reminded him that influence is relative. Harold cleared his throat. Bradley, about that. I want to apologize for my brother's behavior. What he did was unacceptable, and I should have said so immediately instead of trying to smooth things over. Yes, you should have. I was trying to keep the peace. Gerald is family, and I thought maybe we could work it out without things escalating. But I was wrong. He was wrong. And I'm sorry. Does Gerald share that sentiment? Shelley asked sharply. Harold pulled an envelope from his jacket. He asked me to deliver this. Bradley opened it to find a handwritten letter, Gerald's distinctive bold scrawl covering 2 pages. It was, surprisingly, an actual apology. Not a deflection or excuse, but a genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It also agreed to David's terms: counseling, the donation, and no contact unless invited. David scared him straight, Shelley observed. David showed him the consequences of his actions, Bradley corrected. Something that should have happened a long time ago. Candace was taking notes. So you used your relationship with the U.S. attorney to protect my family from a man who explicitly threatened to abuse his power, Bradley said firmly. That's not a story about corruption or hidden influence, Ms. Noble. That's a story about accountability. Gerald Richardson has operated under the assumption that his money and connections make him untouchable. Last night, he learned otherwise. And what about your money and connections? Don't they make you untouchable? If I wanted to be untouchable, I'd have used them long before now, Bradley said. Every investment I've made in this town is documented and above board. Every donation has gone through proper channels. I've paid more in local taxes than anyone else in Millbrook Falls, and I've never asked for special treatment. You want to investigate me? Go ahead. You'll find a private investor who puts his money where his values are. Candace studied him thoughtfully. Mr. Clay, what exactly do you want? From this town, from your investments, from all of it. Bradley thought about Oscar upstairs, about the bruise on his son's face, about the 9 years he'd spent watching Gerald belittle and dismiss him. I want a community where people are judged by their character, not their bank accounts or family names, he said finally. Where kids like Oscar can grow up safe and supported. Where doing the right thing matters more than who you know. That's what I've been working toward. That's what I'll keep working toward. Even if it means going against your own family? She looked at Shelley. My father stopped being family when he hit my son, Shelley said quietly. Bradley is my family. Oscar is my family. And if my father can't understand that, that's his problem. Candace closed her notebook. All right, Mr. Clay, I'll tell the story. But I'm going to tell all of it, the good and the complicated. Deal. As long as it's accurate, I have no problem with that. After she left, Harold lingered. Bradley, I need to ask. The campaign donations, the initiatives I've been able to fund, was that you? Some of it. Not all. You've done good work as mayor, Harold. I supported that work. And now? After last night. Now depends on you. Gerald made his choices. You can make yours. Continue doing good work for this town, and you'll continue to have my support. Let your brother's influence corrupt that work, and we'll have problems. Harold nodded slowly. Fair enough. And Bradley? Thank you for not destroying him. You could have. I still can, Bradley said quietly. If he steps out of line again, I will. Make sure he understands that. After Harold left, Shelley came and sat beside Bradley on the couch. This is going to get complicated, isn't it? Probably. My father's going to hate you even more now. I expect so. Good. She took his hand. He deserves it. Bradley looked at his wife, seeing the hurt and anger in her eyes, but also the resolve. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. About everything. I'm still processing it. The money, the investments, she laughed without humor. I married a secret millionaire. It's like something out of a movie. I'm still the same person you married. Are you? Because the Bradley I married would have probably tried to smooth things over with my father. Would have avoided confrontation. But last night, you made one phone call and brought the U.S. attorney to our doorstep. That's not the same person. Maybe I'm just done pretending, Bradley said. Done letting people like your father define what's acceptable. Oscar deserved protection, and I protected him. No apologies for that. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm asking if you're going to become someone who uses power like my father does. Someone who bends the world to their will because they can. Bradley was quiet for a moment, considering. Your father uses power to control people, to make himself feel important. I use it to solve problems, to build things, to help communities, to create opportunities. That's the difference. And if I ever start to blur that line, I need you to call me on it. Oh, I will, Shelley promised. Trust me on that. Upstairs, they heard Oscar's footsteps. A moment later, their son appeared on the stairs, teddy bear in hand, bruise vivid against his pale skin. Morning, buddy, Bradley said. How are you feeling? My face hurts. But the bear helped. Oscar climbed into Bradley's lap. Dad, are we in trouble? With Grandpa. Bradley exchanged a look with Shelley. No, son. We're not in trouble. Is Grandpa in trouble? Grandpa made some bad choices. He's working on doing better. Oh, Oscar thought about this. Are we still going to see him? Maybe. Someday. When he learns to treat people better. But right now, we're going to focus on us. Our family. And ice cream? Oscar asked hopefully. Shelley laughed, the tension breaking. Sure, baby. We can have ice cream. As the morning sun streamed through the windows and Oscar chattered about his teddy bear, Bradley felt the weight of the previous night settling into something new. A line had been crossed, yes. His anonymity was ending. His life was about to get more complicated. But he'd protected his son. He'd stood up to a bully. And he'd shown Shelley, finally, who he really was. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The article appeared 3 days later, on the front page of the Millbrook Falls Gazette. Candace had done her homework thoroughly. The headline read, Local philanthropist Bradley Clay, the man behind Millbrook's Renaissance. Bradley stood in his home office, reading the piece for the third time. It was fair, he had to admit. Candace had documented his investments, his charitable work, the foundation's impact. She'd interviewed business owners who'd benefited from his low-interest loans, teachers whose programs had received grants, and city officials who'd worked with his representatives without knowing the ultimate source of funding. She'd also, true to her word, included the story of Christmas night, Gerald's assault on Oscar, the confrontation, David Hartman's arrival. She'd framed it carefully, as a moment when Bradley's anonymity had ended because protecting his family demanded it. The town's reaction had been mixed. His phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from Brent Rush, the owner of the hardware store downtown. Didn't know you were the one who kept us afloat during the recession. Next time you're in, first coffee's on me. Thank you. But there were other messages too. Questions about his motives. Concerns about hidden agendas. Angry accusations from people who felt manipulated, even though his investments had objectively improved their lives. Anything interesting? Shelley asked, appearing in the doorway with coffee. The usual mix. Gratitude, suspicion, curiosity. Bradley set the phone down. How was your morning? Awkward. Ran into Paula, where at the grocery store. She wanted to know if we were still friends now that she knows I'm married to the richest man in town. Shelley's expression was pained. I told her nothing had changed, but I could see it in her eyes. Everything's different now. I'm sorry. Don't be. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. She handed him the coffee. Besides, at least now people understand why I chose you over my father's preferences. Turns out I'm an excellent gold digger. Despite everything, Bradley laughed. Yes, you really played the long game on that one. The doorbell rang. Through the window, Bradley could see a luxury sedan parked at the curb, and Gerald Richardson on the front step, looking smaller somehow than he had a week ago. Well, Shelley said dryly. Speak of the devil. Bradley opened the door, but didn't invite Gerald inside. The older man stood there, hands in his coat pockets, looking anywhere but at Bradley's face. What do you want, Gerald? To talk. To apologize properly, face to face. Gerald finally met his eyes. May I come in? No. Gerald flinched. I deserve that. I deserve a lot worse than that, actually. But please, Bradley. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Bradley glanced back at Shelley, who shrugged. Your call. 5 minutes, Bradley said. On the porch. They stood in the winter cold, breath misting between them. Gerald looked older than he had a week ago, the arrogance stripped away to reveal something more human underneath. I read the article, Gerald began. Hell, everyone in town read the article. And I want you to know that I had no idea about who you really are, what you've done for this community. For my company. Does it matter? Bradley asked quietly. Whether you knew or not, hitting Oscar was wrong. Threatening me was wrong. Your money and connections didn't make it right, and my money and connections don't make it wrong. I know. God, I know. I've been thinking about nothing else for the past week. Gerald's voice cracked slightly. I hit my grandson. My only grandchild. Because he dropped some cookies. What kind of man does that? A man who's never faced real consequences, Bradley said bluntly. A man who's been able to bully and intimidate his way through life because people were too afraid to push back. You're right. And I hate that you're right, but you are. Gerald looked toward the house. Is he here? Oscar. I'd like to apologize to him too. Absolutely not. Bradley, please. You don't get to see my son, Gerald. Not now, maybe not ever. You lost that privilege when you struck him. Then what do I have to do? Gerald's frustration was showing. I apologized. I'm going to counseling. I'm making the donation. I'm doing everything that federal prosecutor told me to do. What more do you want from me? Bradley considered him carefully. I want you to understand something fundamental. This isn't about punishment. This isn't about humiliating you or destroying you, even though I could. This is about trust. You violated the most basic trust, the safety of a child. My child. That's not something you fix with apologies and checks. So what then? I just never see my family again. That's up to Shelley. And more importantly, it's up to Oscar. When he's old enough to understand what happened, he gets to decide if he wants a relationship with you. Until then, you stay away. Gerald's face hardened. You're using my grandson against me. No, I'm protecting him from you. There's a difference. For how long? As long as it takes. Could be years, Gerald. Could be never. Depends entirely on whether you can actually change or if this is just an act because you're scared. I am scared, Gerald admitted. Hartman made it very clear what could happen if I step out of line. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I can't sleep at night. Because every time I close my eyes, I see Oscar's face when I hit him. See the fear. See the hurt. Good, Bradley said coldly. Maybe that'll help you remember. They stood in silence for a moment. Down the street, a neighbor was putting up New Year's decorations. Normal life continuing around them. I'm going to keep working on myself, Gerald said finally. Going to counseling, dealing with my anger, all of it. Not because Hartman threatened me, but because I need to. And someday, maybe, I can earn back the right to be in Oscar's life. To be the grandfather he deserves. Maybe, Bradley acknowledged. But that's a long road, Gerald. And you're starting from a very deep hole. I understand. Gerald turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. Not just about the money thing. About everything. You're a good father, a good husband. Shelley's lucky to have you. I know. After Gerald left, Shelley joined Bradley on the porch. How'd it go? About as well as could be expected. He's sorry, but he's also still Gerald. Time will tell if the remorse is real or just self-preservation. My money's on self-preservation, Shelley said. But maybe I'm cynical. You're realistic. There's a difference. They watched Gerald's car disappear down the street. Shelley leaned against Bradley's shoulder. You know what's funny? All these years, my father made me feel like I'd married down. Like I should be grateful he tolerated you. And now everyone knows that you're the one who's been holding up half this town. Including him. Does that feel good? The vindication? It feels complicated. Part of me wants to gloat. Part of me just feels sad that it came to this. That he couldn't just be a decent grandfather without all the drama. She sighed. But mostly I'm just relieved. That we're out from under his shadow. That Oscar won't grow up thinking that's how families should be. Oscar appeared at the window, waving enthusiastically. Bradley waved back. He's resilient, Shelley observed. The bruise is fading, and he hasn't asked about my father in days. Kids are tougher than we think. But I'm going to make sure he knows he never has to accept that kind of treatment. From anyone. Even from you. Bradley looked at his wife. Especially from me. Inside, the phone rang. Then rang again. By the time they made it back indoors, there were 3 new voicemails and a dozen text messages. The price of fame, Bradley muttered, scrolling through them. Business proposals, interview requests, people wanting meetings. His quiet life was officially over. But as Oscar ran up and hugged his legs, chattering about the fort he was building in the living room, Bradley realized he didn't mind as much as he'd thought he would. The anonymity had been nice, but it had also been a shield. One that had let people like Gerald treat him as less than. No more. From now on, everyone would know exactly who Bradley Clay was. And they could either work with him to make Millbrook Falls better, or get out of the way. Dad, come see the fort. Coming, buddy. As he followed Oscar into the living room, Bradley caught Shelley's eye. She smiled, tired but genuine. They'd weathered the storm. Together. And whatever came next, they'd handle that together too. 6 months later, Bradley stood at the podium in the newly renovated town hall, looking out at the crowd assembled for the spring community meeting. The room was packed, standing room only, with people spilling into the hallway. Candace Noble sat in the front row, notebook ready. Harold Richardson was at the council table. And in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, was Gerald. Thank you all for coming, Bradley began. I know the past 6 months have been interesting. For all of us. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. When Candace published that article, I wasn't sure how people would react. Some of you have been incredibly supportive. Others have had questions, concerns, even anger about my involvement in our community. I understand all of those reactions. He'd prepared remarks, but looking at the faces in front of him, people he'd helped, people he'd worked with, people who were trying to figure out who he really was, Bradley decided to be honest instead. I'm going to tell you a story, he said, about why I came to Millbrook Falls in the first place. Bradley had everyone's attention now. 15 years ago, I was living in Seattle. I'd made money in tech investments, more than I knew what to do with. I was 30 years old, successful by any measure, and completely miserable, because I realized that making money is easy compared to making a difference. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I started looking for communities that had potential but needed help. Places where a significant investment could actually change lives, not just generate returns. Millbrook Falls was on the verge of collapse. Your unemployment was at 23%. Young families were leaving. Main Street was half empty. Every metric said this town was dying. But I saw something else. I saw good schools with dedicated teachers. I saw volunteers keeping the library open on their own time. I saw neighbors helping neighbors, even when they could barely help themselves. I saw a community worth saving. So I invested. Quietly, because I wanted the work to speak for itself, not my bank account. I created jobs, funded infrastructure, supported local businesses. And you know what happened? You proved me right. This town isn't successful because of my money. It's successful because you, all of you, did the work. You opened the businesses, taught the classes, ran for office, coached the teams, organized the events. You built this community. I just helped provide some of the resources. Bradley saw heads nodding, but also some skeptical faces. Now, some of you are wondering about my motives. Fair enough. If I'm being honest, it wasn't entirely altruistic. I met my wife here. I started a family here. This became home. So yes, I had a personal stake in making Millbrook Falls succeed. But that doesn't change the fact that we succeeded together. He looked directly at Gerald in the back. His father-in-law looked away. You also know that 6 months ago, I had a conflict with a family member. I won't rehash the details, they're public record. But I will say this. Having resources doesn't make someone a better person. Having power doesn't make someone right. What matters is how we treat each other, especially those who have less power than we do. That's true whether you're rich or poor, connected or not. So here's what I want to propose going forward. Full transparency. My foundation will publish quarterly reports on all investments and donations in Millbrook Falls. We'll have community input on major projects. And we'll establish an independent board to oversee the foundation's local work, with members you elect, not ones I appoint. A murmur ran through the crowd. Harold looked surprised. I'm also pledging to match, dollar for dollar, any community fundraising for infrastructure or social programs over the next 5 years. You want a new playground? A youth center? Better internet access? Raise half the money, and I'll provide the other half. But only if the community decides it's a priority, not me. Candace's hand shot up. Mr. Clay, isn't that just another form of control? Making people dance for your money? Good question. No, because the projects move forward whether I match or not. My contribution just makes them happen faster or bigger. But the community still decides what matters. I'm offering to amplify your voice, not replace it. More hands went up. For the next hour, Bradley fielded questions. Some were hostile, some grateful, most genuinely curious. He answered them all as honestly as he could. Finally, an elderly woman in the third row stood. Bradley recognized her, Beatrice Manning, who'd lived in Millbrook Falls her whole life. Mr. Clay, she said, her voice wavering but strong. My grandson works at the factory you helped restart. My daughter teaches at the school your foundation supports. My husband got his cancer treatment at the hospital wing you funded. I'm not sure I understand all this high finance stuff, but I understand one thing. You helped my family when you didn't have to. So whatever your reasons, whatever your motives, I'm grateful. And I think a lot of folks here feel the same, even if they're not sure how to say it. She sat down to scattered applause. Bradley felt his throat tighten. Thank you, Mrs. Manning. That means a lot. After the meeting, people lined up to talk to him. Some wanted to shake his hand, others to pitch ideas, a few to voice concerns. Bradley listened to all of them. This was part of the price of visibility, being available, being accountable. Gerald approached last, after the crowd had thinned. He looked nervous. That was a good speech, Gerald said. Thank you. I've been going to counseling. Like I promised. It's helping, I think. I'm glad. The therapist says I need to make amends. Real ones, not just words. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. I was thinking maybe I could do something for Oscar. Set up a college fund or... He already has one. Multiple, actually. Right? Of course he does. Gerald looked deflated. I just want to do something. To show that I'm sorry. To show that I'm changing. Bradley studied his father-in-law. 6 months of counseling had brought some changes. Gerald held himself differently, spoke more carefully. But Bradley knew that real change took time. You want to make amends? Bradley said. Here's how. Your construction company has a lot of influence in this town. Use it to support the kind of community we're trying to build. Pay your workers fairly. Follow regulations strictly. Bid on projects honestly. Be the kind of businessman Millbrook Falls needs, not the kind who cuts corners because he can get away with it. Gerald bristled slightly. I've always run an honest company. Have you? Because I've seen the reports David Hartman's team compiled. The creative billing, the questionable labor practices, the connections used to avoid oversight. You've operated in a gray area for years, Gerald. It's time to step into the light. You're blackmailing me. No, I'm telling you what meaningful change looks like. You want back in Oscar's life? Then be someone worth having in his life. Show him what integrity looks like. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. And if I do? If I really commit to this? Then maybe, eventually, we can talk about supervised visits. But that's Shelley's call, not mine. And it's years away, not months. Years, Gerald repeated heavily. You don't get to hit a child and bounce back quickly, Gerald. That's not how trust works. After Gerald left, Shelley appeared from the side room where she'd been watching with Oscar. How'd it go with my father? He's trying. I'll give him that. Whether he succeeds remains to be seen. Oscar tugged on Bradley's sleeve. Dad, can we go get ice cream now? You promised. I did indeed, buddy. Let's go. As they walked to the car, Oscar between them swinging both their hands, Bradley felt the weight of the day settling. The speech had gone well. The community seemed receptive to his proposals, and even Gerald was making an effort. But more than any of that, he had this, his wife, his son, an evening of ice cream and laughter ahead. All the money in the world couldn't buy this. He just had to learn to protect it. Chocolate or vanilla tonight, Oscar? Shelley asked. Both. With sprinkles. Both it is. Bradley smiled. Whatever happened next with the town, with Gerald, with the complicated web of money and power and relationships, these moments would remain. Simple, perfect, earned. And that, he thought, was worth more than anything. 1 year later, the annual Millbrook Falls Festival filled the town square with music, food trucks, and families. Bradley walked through the crowd with Oscar perched on his shoulders, Shelley at his side. The boy pointed excitedly at everything. The balloon artist, the face painting booth, the rock climbing wall. Dad, can I try the climbing wall? Maybe in a bit. You need to be a little taller first, buddy. A year had brought more changes than Bradley could have imagined. The Foundation's Transparency Initiative had sparked a wave of community engagement. 3 new businesses had opened on Main Street. The youth center was under construction. And perhaps most surprisingly, people had stopped treating Bradley like either a savior or a suspect. He was just part of the community now. Bradley. David Hartman waved from a beer garden booth. Come join us. They made their way over to find David with Harold Richardson and several other town officials. The dynamic had shifted over the year. Harold had grown into his role as mayor, less reliant on Gerald's influence, more confident in his own decisions. Great turnout, Harold said. Best festival attendance in a decade. People are happy, David observed. Employed, invested in the community, optimistic about the future. That's what sustainable development looks like. Speaking of which, Harold turned to Bradley. We got the state grant for the broadband expansion. Combined with your matching funds, we can finally get high-speed internet to the whole county. That's fantastic news. Oscar squirmed to be put down, and Shelley took him toward the balloon artist. Bradley watched them go, noting how naturally Shelley had adapted to their changed circumstances. She'd gone back to teaching full-time, but now she also sat on the Foundation's board, bringing her educator's perspective to their work. How's Gerald doing? David asked quietly. Better. Still in therapy. He's actually started volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, working with their construction skills program. Teaching kids woodworking. That's progress. It is. Shelley's even allowed him to see Oscar a few times, supervised visits at the club. Oscar's wary, but they're starting to build something. Think he'll fully rehabilitate? Bradley considered. I think he's trying. That's all anyone can ask. But he'll never be what he was. That man is gone. This version is quieter, more careful, maybe better in some ways. Movement at the edge of the square caught his attention. Gerald himself had arrived, carrying supplies for the woodworking demo he was scheduled to lead. He saw Bradley and nodded. Respectful, careful. Bradley nodded back. You could have destroyed him, Harold said. Everyone knows that. Destruction was never the goal. Protection was. Oscar's protection, this community's protection from unchecked power. Gerald learned that lesson. So did everyone else who thought connections made them untouchable. Including me, Harold admitted. I spent years enabling my brother because it was easier than confronting him. Easier than doing the hard right thing instead of the easy wrong thing. Thank you for holding us accountable. The evening wore on. Oscar got his face painted as a tiger. Shelley won a stuffed bear at the ring toss. Bradley judged the pie contest, diplomatically declaring a three-way tie. As the sun set, the band started playing, and couples filled the dance floor set up in the square. Dance with me? Shelley asked, pulling Bradley toward the music. They swayed together as Oscar showed his face paint to other kids nearby. Around them, Millbrook Falls lived and breathed. Imperfect but improving, complex but hopeful. Happy, Shelley murmured against his shoulder. Very. No regrets about the secret getting out. Not anymore. Turns out being known is better than being hidden. As long as you're known for the right things. And what are you known for, Bradley Clay? He thought about it. A man who protects his family. Who invests in his community. Who believes people can change, but doesn't accept excuses for cruelty. That's not too bad, I think. Not bad at all. As they danced, Bradley saw Gerald across the square, teaching a group of teenagers how to properly hold a wood plane. The old arrogance was gone, replaced by something more patient, more genuine. Whether it would last, time would tell. But for now, it was enough. Oscar ran up, breathless and excited. Dad, Mom, they're doing fireworks soon. Can we watch? Absolutely, buddy. They found a spot on the grass, Oscar between them. As the first rockets burst overhead, painting the sky in gold and silver, Bradley felt Shelley's hand in his and Oscar's excited chatter in his ear. This was what he'd fought for on that Christmas night. Not revenge, not vindication, though those had come. But this, safety, joy, a future where his son could grow up knowing his worth wasn't defined by money or connections or power, but by character. The fireworks built to their crescendo, and Oscar clapped with delight. Somewhere behind them, Gerald watched the same show, alone but perhaps not lonely. Learning, slowly, what it meant to be part of something bigger than himself. And Bradley, looking at his family illuminated by bursting light, knew that this was the victory that mattered. Not power demonstrated, but family protected. Not enemies crushed, but better futures built. The last firework faded, and the crowd applauded. Oscar yawned hugely, the long day catching up to him. Time to go home, Shelley suggested. Yeah, Bradley said, scooping up his son. Let's go home. As they walked back to their car, Oscar already half asleep on his shoulder, Bradley took one last look at the square. His town, his community, his home. Built on money, yes, but sustained by something far more valuable. The collective effort of people choosing, every day, to do better. And that, Bradley thought as he settled Oscar into his car seat, was the real power. Not the kind you could buy or inherit or leverage, but the kind you earned, one choice at a time. The kind that lasted. The kind that mattered. The kind worth protecting at any cost. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.